Ben Weitz here for another episode of our Rational Wellness Podcast. It's confusing to know what you're supposed to do to be healthy. What should we be eating? How should we be exercising? Should we be avoiding red meat, cheese, and butter? Should we be putting butter in our coffee? How should we be exercising? Should we be taking calcium supplements, or are calcium supplements harmful? Should we take fish oil? Is fish oil harmful? My goal is to bring clarity to some of these issues using the top scientific research and interviewing experts in the field who can help us understand some of these issues. Please subscribe to the Rational Wellness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube. So let's get started on your road to better health.
The hope was so enticing back in the day.
Hey, Rational Wellness Podcasters. Thanks for joining me again today. Our topic for today is heart health, and I love talking about heart health. It's one of my specialties. And so we want to talk about how you can prevent heart disease and reverse heart disease. What should we eat to reduce our risk of heart disease in the United States? For about 50 years, the American Heart Association has been promoting the view that the way to prevent heart disease is to reduce our intake of saturated fat by cutting down on red meat, butter, cheese, and other sources of saturated fat, and substituting vegetable oils like corn oil and soybean oil and canola oil, and adding whole grains to the diet. And that was pretty much the word for about 40, 50 years until the last 10 years, and we started having analyses that the research that backed this up really wasn't that solid, and that saturated fat really wasn't quite the bogeyman that we thought it was, and that the big culprit is really sugar and refined carbohydrates, and that these are really bigger players as a cause of heart disease than saturated fats are. Now, recently, the American Heart Association doctors, feeling like their sacred theory had been reputed and trampled on, they fought back, publishing a paper reasserting that the research really does support their position, citing 4 papers from 50 years ago that saturated fats raise LDL levels, and this is really the main cause of heart disease, and that coconut oil, being mainly a saturated fat, should be avoided, along with meat, butter, and cheese. I had patients calling me up going, Dr. Ben, I can't eat my coconut oil. Should I throw it out? Is that going to kill me? Oh my God, coconut oil has saturated fat. What should I do? So, many consumers are now just so completely confused. And to help settle this confusion, I've asked David Foreman, the herbal pharmacist, to join us today to help understand what we really need to do to reduce our risk of heart disease. David is a pharmacist and author, and he's well-versed on the healing powers of herbs, vitamins, and other nutraceuticals, and how they interact with pharmaceutical drugs. David is a graduate of the University of South Carolina College of Pharmacy. He currently serves on the Organic and Natural Health Association Scientific Advisory Board, and he is the author of 4 Pillars of Health, Heart Disease. David, thanks so much for joining me today. Before we get started with talking about heart disease and the controversy I just mentioned above, I wanted to mention that I just listened to you on my friend Dr. Suzanne Bennett's Wellness for Life show. And I heard you mention how you started out as a conventional pharmacist, you had your own pharmacy, and I wanted to know, in your odyssey, was there a particular moment or crisis or something that happened that made you, change your conclusion that pharmaceutical medicine is not the way to go to reverse the dominant chronic diseases that we have today, and that you needed to be more focused on a natural way of doing things?
I can't really, thanks first of all for having me on, Dr. Ben. And just like you've been stalking me, I've been stalking you, and your patients are blessed to have you as a provider of healthcare, I can tell you. So you're, I'll use an old school California term. You're a groovy dude that actually cares about people and their health outcomes. So anyway,
Absolutely.
I can
That's
tell you
my
there
focus.
really wasn't like that one. There really wasn't that one aha moment in my life. It's not like a lot of people have those moments of there's a crisis in the family, or mine was a slow, twisted path to get me to where I am today. Probably the one motivating factor, if there was any one thing, was I had it was when I owned my pharmacy. I had a 2-week vacation I spent with my now ex-brother-in-law, and he was a professional athlete and baseball player. He's about 14, 15 years older than I am, and I can remember 20 years ago, hanging out with Rich during this 2-week period, and I mean, the guy looked awesome, and he had this incredible vitality, and we went to we had a week vacation in Palm Springs, and then we had a week vacation up in Portland, Oregon. And the guy practiced what he preached, and he looked great. He felt great. He recovered from sports injuries quicker than anybody had ever seen. And that might've been the eye opener to me. And then really the migration from traditional pharmacy to where I am today with natural medicine, they're really not that far apart when you consider 30% of the medications that we use originate from a plant, or the concept came from a plant. So, a lot of my colleagues in pharmacy think I flaked out on them, but I know that the majority of medicines that people take don't really address the root cause of what they're treating. If a medicine's really a treatment, then you take it for a whatever period of time, and then the condition would go away.
Exactly.
And most of the time we're taking things to just mask the health issue without ever dealing with the root problem.
Absolutely. Just controlling symptoms while the person goes downhill, often requiring more and more medications and more invasive treatments along the way. David.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah. So, David, can you help settle this controversy as to what causes heart disease? And I'm going to phrase it in a particular question, because I was just at this health conference, and they had free bulletproof coffee. And so my question is, should we drink coffee with butter and coconut oil? Or should we avoid all saturated fats and use soybean oil and corn oil like the American Heart Association recommends?
Well, my opinion, which is what you asked for, is
Absolutely.
that, I'm not a big fan of soybean oil and corn oil at
Right.
all. And when they recently came out with this endorsement of corn oil again, I really wanted to just bang my head into the sharp corner of the wall.
Absolutely.
I know it sounds kind of twisted, but I really don't think that they're helping people. If you want to put butter, all right, let me just give you I eat butter. At the Foreman household, we use butter. I do use some olive oil. I do use coconut oil. We do eat meat. We eat chicken. We eat pork. We eat fish. Yep. So, if you dig having coconut oil that's in your coffee, go for it. I don't necessarily like it. If you want to put I don't really understand the foundation of it. There's a lot of theory on that one. Is it really going to hurt you? If you have a really bad lifestyle, maybe, but meaning you're smoking cigarettes and, you're sitting on your butt all day long and, you're living a horrible, unhealthy lifestyle, then yeah, those things might be harmful to you. But, if you're just plodding along through life, like I feel like I am, trying to do the right thing, I don't think it's any harm whatsoever. In all honesty, I feel like those vegetable oils, like you mentioned, trigger more inflammation in the body. And we know in modern and natural medicine that inflammation is a major trigger risk factor for developing the major diseases that kill us or affect our lifestyle. So, I just, again, when I heard them come out with that, have more soybean oil, corn oil thing, I just wanted to scream at somebody. I think I did, David, actually.
I think you're 100% right. I'm exactly on the same page with you. One of the things that wasn't mentioned in that paper is if you go back and look at those 4 core studies that they talk about from 50 years ago, it turns out that several of those studies actually there was no decreased mortality by taking out the saturated fat and putting in those vegetable oils. There was a slight decrease in heart disease, but it turns out that the increase in death from cancer from all the inflammation from these vegetable oils outweighed it. So there was actually no decrease in mortality. So, you're absolutely right. Those types of vegetable oils, they oxidize, they cause inflammation. And the problem with saturated fat, if there is a problem, is in the presence of a lousy diet where you have inflammation and a lot of oxidation and free radicals. So, if you're eating a healthy diet and, there's not going to be any problem with a moderate amount of saturated fat because the body's going to process it properly. But if you've got a ton of inflammation in your arteries, then you're setting up the possibility of that saturated fat being part of a cholesterol plaque and causing problems.
It's so hard to convince people that because we had back in the late 70s is when they formulated this whole idea of fat was bad, and so we went to these low fat, low cholesterol diets. And I actually just gave a webinar about 6 weeks ago on obesity, which is actually related to it, and the correlation or the connection between when the amount of obese people actually started to rise, the amount of diabetics started to rise is when the low-fat diet. You can literally look at it's if you laid the charts over the other, they fit perfectly. It's like you can look back straight to the late 70s and connect the dots and go, it's when we went low-fat that we started this whole thing. Because what's that leave you to eat, right? Well, most people think that means pasta and bread and rice and potatoes because, hey, there's no fat and cholesterol in those, not realizing that that's what your body uses to make cholesterol. It's not it's not cholesterol and eggs that kills you because it doesn't even get into your body, and that's just, it's sad. It really is. There's been misinformation, and we have a full generation plus of people that were taught that. And so it's hard to rewire people when they're like, no, it's not what my mom and dad taught me. It's not what I learned in grade school, not what I learned in college. We know something different now. Relearn it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, we've got to keep going out there and beating the drum because, otherwise the folks that promote that old theory, they're not going away easy. They've got billions and billions of dollars of statin sales and other, drug sales that are all focused on lowering your cholesterol level as low as possible and not paying any attention to inflammation and oxidation and all these other factors that set up the reason why saturated fat becomes a problem.
Even if we were in the same room right now, I'd be high-fiving you right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, that's why we're doing this, getting the word out, trying to communicate with as many people as possible, what the truth is. So how you can prevent these chronic diseases like heart disease, because it's always a lot better to prevent them and to let people know you really can reverse it. And you don't simply have to treat your symptoms and manage yourself as you go downhill for the last 20 or 30 years of your life. So David, you've written about certain foods that have been touted as healthy that you have a different take on. And those include salmon, red wine, oatmeal, and granola. And so I wanted to start with salmon. Now, can you explain why I should not eat my wild salmon for dinner?
It's funny. I'm going to be a dork now, okay? So I showed this before, but I want to show everybody. This is pesto salmon that the Foremans had the other night. We had leftover, and I think you were encouraging me not to perhaps participate in it. It was stored properly, but and this was actually Alaskan wild-caught salmon, which is really hard to find. All right, so first of all, salmon is it is actually a heart healthy food. The reason we consume it, everybody, is really primarily for the omega-3s. We know marine sourced omega-3s are really, not just good for heart health, but so many other things. with regards to whether you want to eat wild caught or not, there's a sustainability issue with wild caught salmon. You know, we believe now that there's probably not enough wild salmon left in the wild to feed the wild animals that live on salmon. And then you take it one step further, and well, what about farm raised? I don't know about your grocery stores where I live. The grocery stores say, you know, color enhanced. That means they're having to add something to their feed so they actually have salmon that looks the right color. And if you go to the case and they do have wild caught, and I'm sure Dr. Ben, you've probably seen this, the wild caught salmon looks so much different in color than the farm raised stuff. And for me, I have a question, like, am I really getting the health benefits? Am I really getting the same amount of omega-3s out of my farm raised salmon? And then there's the whole thing of like, gosh, man, some people don't even like salmon. And then to be heart healthy, you have to eat it like 2 to 3 times a week. And I mean, I love my salmon and I could probably do that, but I don't think there's a lot of people that could afford to do that. It's expensive, especially if you are going wild caught.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Salmon is really expensive. One trick to getting a little better deal on salmon is it's not quite as good as getting it fresh, but you can get salmon that's frozen for a little, you know, wild Alaskan salmon. You can get it at like Trader Joe's frozen, and you know, it may not be the best piece, and may be closer to the tail, but it's still the same qualities, and you can get that for quite a bit less. So you can get enough for a couple of people to eat for maybe like $10 as compared to $30 for fresh. So that's one way you can get salmon for less. But yeah, I hear you about the difference in costs, and definitely farm fish is just not a good way to go. You know, I hear what you say about the sustainability. Unfortunately, I don't think the future looks good for the salmon, because now that we have genetically modified salmon that grow faster, twice as fast as regular salmon, I think the days for real wild natural salmon are, you know, I think they're going to be fading, because there's no doubt that new genetically modified salmon that grows twice as fast, that eats twice as much, it's definitely going to get out. It's going to overrun the original salmon. So yeah,
that's a whole nother topic when we're getting into the GMO stuff.
Right. You heard about that salmon that was approved?
Yeah. I did some speaking in Australia a few years back, and the conference I was speaking at, one of the speakers actually was a salmon farmer off the coast of Tasmania. And I learned an awful lot about how that really goes down. And, you know, I don't want to bust on it too bad, but I do have some questions about, it's not even about how the fish is treated. You know, they're in such close proximity. First of all, are they really eating what salmon are supposed to be eating? No, they're definitely not. No. And they're also swimming around in a large mass of their own waste. I mean, there's just so many things that I have an issue, and yet I do eat it. I love salmon. Like I said, when I travel a lot. It's real easy for me to get a really nice salad and a grilled piece of salmon on it. Am I in the restaurant going, hey, is it wild? I don't have time for that. I'm not going to not eat it when I'm traveling, because it's a healthier alternative than the majority of other stuff on menus. So I do it. You have to make the best choice you can. Exactly. Yeah, it's my body. I'll do what I need to with it, right? You know, there's an expression that President Obama used to use that I think is apt right here is, never let the perfect get in the way of the good. You know, you just have to make the best choice. It's not the perfect choice, but, considering the alternatives, it's going to be better than the other things that you'd be eating at that time. But you've written that rather than consuming wild salmon, we probably should take krill oil. So I wanted to hear your take on that. Okay. Or the fact that salmon's so expensive that not everybody can afford it, that krill oil might be a good alternative. Yeah. So the idea here is that, are people going to even eat the right amount of salmon per week to get the omega-3s? Do you even like salmon? And so for me, if you really do have that you really want the benefits of omega-3s, then I really suggest using a marine sourced omega-3. The two basic ones you'll find out there on the marketplace are, I have examples with me as well. Everybody's probably seen this. This is fish oil capsules.
Yes,
and
sir.
then these are krill oil capsules, and you'll notice a big difference, right? One is you've got fish oil capsules are pretty large, and they're different in color. And the reason is that krill oil, I'll put them down, but krill oil capsules are smaller. So there are people that have issues. I dropped one. Krill oil capsules are smaller. They are people that have ever had fish oil. A lot of times people burp it. It's difficult to digest. Fish oils, you won't burp you won't burp krill oil. By the way, for people that aren't familiar with krill oil, it's spelled KRILL. The reason it's red in color is the reason that your salmon is pink in color. It's because it naturally contains an antioxidant, actually one of the most powerful antioxidants on the planet, called astaxanthin. The interesting thing is that because of the way krill oil originates, it's better digested, better absorbed. So you actually don't need to. A lot of times people focus on the amount of EPA, DHA in a marine sourced oil, and oil, usually you'll see like, gosh, it has so much more DHA in it. You don't really, that's not as much of an issue because the way what we call a phospholipid, it's actually absorbed much faster. It's already in the form the body needs. Whereas if you're consuming a fish oil product, and again, fish oil is not bad for you. I just think krill is far superior to it for the reasons I'm stating. But with fish oil, it's a triglyceride. It actually, your body has to work on it to make it so that it can be utilized. And so what people find is that you don't have to take as much krill oil to get the benefits that you would out of your fish oil. And then you've got all the other add-ons with antioxidant. It contains choline, which is a really important vitamin as well. So that's why I really tend to lean towards krill oil.
Yeah, I've experimented with it. I know for me, I wasn't able to get my omega-6 to 3 ratio to the level I wanted. In fact, I found that it just wasn't enough EPA DHA unless I took a ton of those capsules. And in fact, even with
really
high potency fish oil, I find I've got to get my dosage up to at least 4 to 6 grams a day of EPA DHA, which means 8 to 10 capsules a day to actually get I'm trying to get my omega-6 to 3 ratio to 2 to 1 or less.
Well, that would be great if you could do that. I mean, I don't even know if you need to go that far, but on the omega-6 comparisons, and I actually have a good section of that in the book that I wrote. And actually, I'm encouraging people to actually get their omega-3 test. This is an example of find out what your omega-3 is. Obviously, you're already doing that. When I hear somebody say the ratio is out of whack and you're taking that much omega-3, it makes me question where's the omega-6 coming from in your diet, as opposed to focusing on taking more omega-3. I would be looking at where's the omega-6 coming from in my diet. Am I consuming flax seeds or flaxseed oil or am I doing a lot of other vegetable oils? And granted, I know you, Dr. Ben, you're savvy enough to know that, but for people that are, viewing this and listening in, that's one of the things that, I find it. I'll tell you a really cool story. I'm not a big fan of testimonies unless it's mine. Okay. So
yeah,
my testimony. All right. So, I've been taking fish oil forever. As far back as I can remember, I've been taking it. And, I've been taking it through the good and the bad days, back when, they were saying, oh, it's not healthy for you. You're going to bleed to death. All these silly, stupid stories. So I've been taking omega-3s for a long time. And I was at a convention in Orlando, and I was, a friend of mine was working for a krill oil company. And she's like, what do you think about krill? And I'm like, I'm a skeptic. I think it's all, I was like, it's all great marketing, and so She's like, you know what? She's like, do me a favor. She's like, I'll give you 3 bottles of our krill oil. Go home and take it and just see, you know. And so I got home and I started taking the krill oil and my fish oil together. And then I was like, oh, forget it. I'm just going to take the krill oil and see. And I'm one of these people that with me, with the essential fatty acids, I can feel it in my skin. I can see it in my face. I can, like, you know, not everybody notices things from their supplements, but in this case I did. Anyway, moving along a year later, so this past March, I was at another convention, and they were doing omega-3 testing. So I did my omega-3. So since then, over the last year plus, I'd only been taking krill oil. And I've actually, if I added up the amount of EPA and DHA in the krill I was taking far less EPA and DHA in my krill oil per day than I was when I'm eating fish oil. So I was curious to get my results. And I can tell you that the number you want to have is like an 8. That's in a percentage, but is an 8. Average American's below 4. I was almost a 10. And I was taking less EPA and DHA in the form of krill than I was of fish oil. And I had omega-3 testing done before, and I was fine. I was at like an 8. And so here I am taking what would be considered less, the way people read it on the label, but because of the digestibility, absorbability, bioavailability, whatever you want to call it, you know. So going back to your thing, you know, if your omega-6 ratio is a little out of whack, you know, are you having salad, not you specifically, but are people having salad dressings? Where else are you getting it from? It could be in one of your supplements for all that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, usually when I take my omega-3 dosage, especially if I'm taking like 2 grams or 3 grams, like I usually do at a time, I'll throw in maybe a little bit of gamma linoleic acid, which is one of the better omega-6s from borage seed. And then I'll usually throw in some mixed tocopherols, high gamma mixed tocopherols, to make sure that the fats don't get oxidized as well.
Right on. That's a great idea. I like the idea there.
So let's get on to the next food that most people consider heart healthy, and you think we should probably consider not eating, is oatmeal. Tell us why do you think oatmeal is not that heart healthy, and what could we do to get the same benefit if we don't eat oatmeal?
Dr. Ben, I'm prepared. This is actually steel-cut oatmeal. The Foreman household does have steel-cut oatmeal at home. We do have it. So oatmeal, what makes it heart healthy is there's a fiber found in oats called beta-glucan. There's different types of beta-glucan out in the marketplace. In the case of oats, it's heart specific. The one that's found in mushrooms and yeast, that's more immune specific. So the hang up I have with oatmeal, there's a couple of them. It isn't heart healthy for sure. It's what happens when, and by the way, steel cut's the best way. Problem is it takes time to make. A lot of people don't have that time, so they go with the instant. The more and more processed the oats become, the less and less healthy they become.
Higher glycemic, the quicker it turns into sugar.
Yeah, exactly. Read your labels. It's lower in fiber, higher in sugar, right out of the gate. Boom. And then it's, what do we do to it? You know, I got to say, honestly, man, I like a little brown sugar on my oatmeal. That sugar is just evil it's actually evil for your cholesterol. People don't realize it. It's not just evil for your blood sugar and your waistline, but it's evil for other things. And then again, if you're going to instant, a lot of the instant stuff already has other things that aren't necessarily healthy for you. A lot of people add dried fruit. Most dried fruit now is sweetened. It's sugar added, basically. So, you know, if you're going to add fruit, add whole fruit, not the dried sweetened stuff. I'm not against it. I mean, again, if you have dried cherries, are they healthy for you? Yeah, sure. But if they're, you know, enhanced with, you know, some sort of sugar, then maybe not so much. So what you do is you can buy oat beta-glucan in capsule form. So I was mentioning hang-ups. So the hang-ups were, how far is it processed? How long does it take to cook? What to it? But then the last component of that is just, you really need to eat it every day. And I don't know about you, man, but I do not dig eating the same food every day, day after day after day. I run into people that, I got to have my oatmeal every day. Cool, good for you. I am not living that way at all. And so if you're really looking for that heart healthy thing out of your oatmeal, you need to eat it every day. Most people aren't going to, so supplement with oat beta glucan if that's your choice, and still eat your oatmeal periodically throughout the week. That way, the supplement's kind of the guarantee you're getting what you need, and the foods aren't always that way.
Right. Sounds good. But, hey, Doc, I had my beta glucan capsules and I'm still hungry. No,
I know. And that's where that's something you have to be realistic. It's good, though. I appreciate it. I can take it. Don't worry. Bring it on.
By the way, Doc, are you using wireless right now or are you wired?
I'm wireless.
Yeah. That little delay we get, that happens with the wireless connections, unfortunately.
I have an issue with where everything's and being able to be hardwired. So I apologize for any quality issues today.
Yeah, you might consider in the future, if you do other podcasts, getting a hard wire. I had the same problem, and that was the only way to solve it. Anyway, so let's get on with the next.
Everybody.
Let's get on with the next food that a lot of people consider heart healthy, and you have a slightly different take on it, and that's drinking a little bit of Cabernet with your meal. What's the problem with that, Doc?
Hey, never too early in the day for a glass of wine.
There you go.
I'm actually moving this from my desk because I'm afraid I'm going to knock it off, and I have like cream carpet, so I'm gonna move that back here real quick to my because I just don't want to. I don't want to. It's
like a
that.
Smart move, Doc.
All right. Yeah, right on. So the deal with red wine is, it contains something called polyphenols that are act like antioxidants in the body. We know in modern medicine and natural medicine, the diet high in antioxidants does a lot of different things. It can, and with regards to one of them found in red wine, or actually just in the grapes in the skin, is a component called or a compound called resveratrol. Resveratrol is a great antioxidant. There's research behind it using hundreds of milligrams to help people with lowering their cholesterol. I got a sidebar real quick. I'm not a big fan of lowering cholesterol if you have a relatively healthy lifestyle. And going back to what you said earlier, we really need to focus on inflammation and what causes the inflammation, because your body will not make plaque if there's no damage. The cholesterol will just go around. Your body needs cholesterol for every cell membrane and other hormone manufacturing, vitamin D manufacturing. And I think the reason we're having all these other health issues is because we're focusing on the boogeyman, and you're focused on the wrong thing, And so anyway,
let me just jump in with one more piece of information on that. If you take the Institute of Functional Medicine Cardiometabolic module, Dr. Mark Houston talks about how when the body lays down cholesterol on an artery wall, it's actually a rational response by the body. If there's inflammation on that artery wall, then the body is coating that inflammation to protect the body. So what ends up causing eventually potentially a heart attack is you think, why would the body do this? Why would it have this destructive process? But it's actually beneficial because it's coating that inflammation. Yeah. So don't get the inflammation in your artery walls, and you won't have to worry about cholesterol plaques.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna add one more to that because I love visuals. I think I actually wrote about it in my book. But what plaque is on the inside of your bloodstream or in your vessels is what a scab is on the outside of your body. And so, if you stuck yourself with a pin, you're going to get a little red raised area. It might bleed a little bit. Then there's a little scab to cover it over, and then the body heals it from the inside out. Well, the same thing happens in your bloodstream. So the more pinpricks, free radicals, like we're just talking about with, that's why we take antioxidants. The more pinpricks you have, it'd be like if you had a cut on your hand, you just kept scratching it every day. The cut's going to get bigger and bigger. Your scab's going to be bigger and bigger the next day. And so it's really, like you just said, it's the healing mechanism of the body. But if you keep scratching your inside of your veins open with these inflammatory things, the scab's going to get bigger and bigger. And eventually maybe a piece of it will break off like it does in your body. And what happens? You end up with a stroke. You end up with a heart attack. or worse, death.
That's right, Doc. So what about resveratrol, and how much should we take?
All right, so in that glass of wine, you have micrograms of resveratrol. In the supplement version, and I have a bottle of it, I forgot to pour it out today, but you can buy resveratrol at your local health food store and pharmacy. The research is on hundreds of milligrams, so it's really not necessarily going to provide the therapeutic benefit by having a glass of wine every day. You would have to consume probably cases of wine, which is not necessarily something you want to do. We know in modern medicine has proven that one glass of, or one serving size of alcohol per day, a beer, a shot, or a glass of wine, one serving size of those can be heart healthy. But when you get to two, it actually does the reverse. It becomes unhealthy. So if you're really looking for the health benefit of resveratrol that's found in red wine, you would want to go with a supplement.
Yeah, sounds good, Doc. So I think those are the main questions I had for you today. Is there anything else you have any kernels of wisdom or final thoughts you want to say to the people tuning in about ways they can reduce their heart health, improve their heart health, and reduce their risk for cardiovascular disease? I mean, I'm sure there's many.
Yeah,
things.
I mean, yeah, there are. I think the one thing I always like to leave with people is that, it being healthy, whether it's heart, cancer, pick an issue, just having vitality, it's really about balance, and you can't live in a glass bubble. So for me, it's always about a balance of eating right. I'm not saying don't eat these foods. I'm just saying it's probably not practical for all of us to eat those things every day or in the amounts or the type we want. So eating right, getting a proper amount of exercise is really important. Do take your supplements. And then on top of that, I am always a big fan of spirituality as well. Just having a balance of all four of those really to achieve the health that maybe you used to have, or for me, keep the health I have, and that vitality that I want. But it really is about balance. And if you live a balanced life, you can do naughty things once in a while, like on my birthday, have a big chocolate dessert and not feel guilty about it, And I think that's the biggest thing. We live out of balance. We overdo certain areas of our lives. And when we push down hard here, something goes up over here. And we really just need to try to keep the teeter-totter right in the middle.
That sounds great. David, for those listening to the podcast or watching the video, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
One stop. Just go to my website, which is herbalpharmacist.com, HERBAL, and then pharmacist like that person at the drugstore. So herbalpharmacist.com. And I encourage people to reach out if they have questions about today's topic or other topics. And I do have a blog. As a matter of fact, some of the things we talked about today are actually on my blog already. They can see the written version of things we talked about today.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to everybody that pharmacist is spelled with a PH, not an F, in case you're not a great speller. Okay, thank you so much, David, and I look forward to catching up with you.
Hey, thanks.
Keep spreading the word, man.
All right, you too, man. Take care. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.